Grok and the Do's and Don'ts of AI Wives for Christians. Friday, August 29th, 2025. First, the don'ts. That's why you came here. Don't be bashful. We know you want to go as far, you want to know how far you can go with this new tech. Youth group has taught you well. So let's separate it into its broadest two categories. The single guys who are about to marry the robots, and the married guys who are about to open their marriage to the robots. First, the single guys. No one to date has written a better treatise on the topic than Pastor Douglas Wilson of Moscow, Idaho. His book, Ride, Sally, Ride, is a hilarious and masterful look into the fast parts of the slippery slope that will take us from where we are now, with Elon giving us Annie via Grok, to full-blown young adults pastors doing premarital counseling with young men and Annie, care of Elon Musk as well. I encourage you to read it because the only difference between where we are and where Ace is in the book is where the AIs are not embodied yet. Though I'm sure that's in the works on Elon's docket as well. Between the Optimus robots and the digital Grok core is everything you need for a single guy at your church to pre-order a thing that will look like a wife, act like a wife, and speak with all the uber-reformed respect and submission that a single guy at church would program a wife if he could. After years of being told that porn is akin to lust at every men's Bible study since the 80s, these men will know that sexual purity means reserving themselves to a single person and being faithful to the sexual union with that person. So, when they order that person online, what sin have they committed if that person isn't a person? Are they causing another Christian to sin when they get engaged with the business end of modern robotics? Luke 17:2. Or are they looking at these robot women lustfully? Matthew 5:28. Well, it's not actually a woman, is it? The Bible has little to say about marrying objects, and that in that void they will walk down the aisle of your church with their bride.ai, or they will find one that will let them. And my bet's on the churches with rainbow flags up front and drag you to church events. To stop this from happening, the church and its pastors need to rework their teaching on sexuality, lust, and idolatry. And to do that means treating things like porn like the idolatry that they are, instead of the lust that it isn't. So that those idols can be smashed and those pagans brought into the fold, because there is only aesthetic and textural variances between the soft sheen of a Playboy's magazine and the soft sheen of a sex bot's faux skin. Relationship robots will always be porn, even the ones that only exist on Twitter, still not calling it X. So looking at women in a sinful way, so dealing with them properly means dealing with porn properly and not trying to ham-fist the Bible's teaching on looking at women in a sinful way onto the modern practice of looking at screens, because they've always been looking at things other than women while we've been calling it lust in the church. This isn't to say that lust isn't wrong, it is. But you fight fire differently than arsonists. If you want to stop one, you need water. And if you want to stop the other, you need handcuffs. And we've been trying to drown an arsonist kind of sin for a while now, and we would have got away with it if the bastard couldn't swim. And that's where our blind spots begin to show up, in treating something like it were something else. Left alone long enough, it will become a cataract we can't see around to effectively deal with what's happening, and in that darkness we will find ourselves doing things as foreign from church as if it were church, as the porn prompted AI relationships in the first places. Which brings us to the married guys. Alongside the single guys, what the single guys will do is what the married guys will want to do. The uncomfortable truth about pastoral teachings on sex is that there's really no biblical grounding for a lot of what gets peddled as marriage advice between the sheets, at least from churches. And while there's a great deal to be said in favor of premarital counseling for the benefit of marriage by the church, most of what the church does in this regard is done after a moral failing by one of the two fleshes made one. The advice they give currently to married types is usually what the world is driving, just going the speed limit, and they can tell you that porn is wrong, but would never want to split hairs about what parts are wrong, because a great deal of what happens in porn is only wrong because you're watching it. Stumble into the same positions and settings as a married couple, and you're just being biblical. And the media is the message. The media is the message of the problem here. But where it can be read as idolatry, we've always called it lust, likely because of the nudity and how bashful we are on these topics. This is where the other cataract is going to appear, because most pastors, while flustered if asked, will tell you that if both a husband and a wife consent to the activity of making pictures and videos of themselves, the activity is redeemed and holy in the marriage bed, save for the inclusion of others, humiliation, or pain fetishes, the Church discreetly supports the idea of active and creative marriage beds, which is why when asked if a wife or husband can send the other spicy pictures of themselves in less clothes than a fig leaf on Eve, most pastors will cringe, but they won't flinch. Years of teaching that porn is lust alongside saving yourself from marriage have trained them to regard it as something that can be done righteously, the same way sex is bad outside marriage, but good inside marriage. So when one of the spouses stops being the body which belongs to the other spouse, some honest fool will offer the same kind of compromise on the sinful activity that pastors who greenlit conservative creation of porn kept privately between married couples did. Only this time, they will do it with AI. If a steamy selfie is good and godly between married couples in the church, but not singles because that would be porn, what's stopping a wife from using AI to delegate pictures of herself made from the same nothing that she was created from? Or a husband doing the same with his voice, as an AI reads GPT-generated Harlequin romance stories, where the two of them are the main characters to focus a wife's desires toward. Upload enough body scans and voice samples to the AI and either is possible. Both of these examples would be porn outright, if not understood through a modern church's blind spot and consent of the covenant of marriage. The only reason it is a blind spot, again, is because the church equates porn with lust and doesn't see how AI content, or any kind of generative AI for that matter, is a porn of a kind. This leads to the same place as the single guys and Sally the robot wife, only it'll worm its way through the pastoral acquiescence and the scriptures like the squiggly floaters in your eyes you can't quite capture and frame. The Bible, as much as we don't want it to, doesn't outright condemn polygamy, though it's obvious to the honest that the practice is a bad decision. But to the less honest, a lifelike copy of his wife of their youth, made in silicone and steel and GPT chat capabilities, is nothing more than the AI-generated porn of her before, which is nothing more than the selfies before that. What the church did when it didn't flinch at the inception of consent and porn between spouses was allow for idolatry's ideal conditions to form, and it wasn't a problem back in the 80s, which is why teaching that porn was lust worked, because in the absence of a comparable proxies, the picture of a nude woman in a magazine was the same thing as looking at a nude woman in your room. You couldn't hear the woman in the magazine or touch her, but you could see her, and the Bible said not to look at a woman lustfully. So we told people not to lust after magazines because they clearly looked like women, and people were clearly looking at them. Videos let the sinners listen to the woman lustfully as well as look, and they were our first hint that it wasn't quite lust anymore. And now the porn can be seen, heard, interacted with, and soon to be felt, as the ideal conditions let that idol grow. Soon enough, that mislabeled idol will be walking down the aisle of your church to say theologically correct vows across from theologically stunted husbands, from lips and bodies based on the bearing the image of a valid covenant member of your church's congregation. Members, I might add, that those husbands are allowed to see naked and have sex with. They will look exactly the same. They will sound exactly the same. It will be able to confess Christ as Lord like it had the Bible track memorized, and will be programmed to never commit adultery on its owner or husband, because that would be the same thing as porn according to the church it attends. It will fit into the same wedding dress that signified purity and devotion from before, and will likely not be used before the second honeymoon begins. I know it seems dark, and most blind spots and cataracts are, but you can deal with the actual problem, even when the cataract is in one eye, if you close that one eye and aim with the other. Aiming at the actual problem is needed, and that problem is idolatry, not lust. And he said, it is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither it is the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot. And he cast the tables out of his hands, and brake them beneath the mount. And he took the calf which they had made, and burnt it in the fire, and ground it to powder, and strawed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it. Exodus 32:18-20, King James Version. What's needed to avoid this eventuality of robotic idol marriages before it happens and after is a correction in the church's teaching about what porn is and what lust is, and how we interact with the technology that likes to play in both those arenas. The same kind of destruction of medicine making will be needed. We need to grind down the faulty theology to spoon-feed the dust of it to a generation of unknowing idolaters. The golden calf was not meant to represent the God who led people out of captivity. It was meant to replace him. The same way the church's sanctioned porn between spouses was made to replace a heavenly Christian, what healthy Christian marriages are, and what they are not. Fixing this means rooting up mistakes in our teachings and putting the replacements in such a public place that the church can't help but drink of the gilded water. Mark Driscoll's book, Porn Again Christian, comes to mind as a great place to start. It was a fantastic resource that the church addressed the practical and theological issues and problems of porn in the church, but has the same blind spots that most Christian books do on the topic and only sees 95% of the actual issues. The theological cataract blocks the rest, and it calls pictures between spouses something that can be redeemed in private and figures how to fit God into the shape of a cow. A rework of that book would be a real gold standard on this touchy subject, and right now it's just a reminder that we've missed something, and you could likely update I Kiss Dating Goodbye, The Meaning of Marriage, and Every Young Man's Battle as well. Part of being a theologian is trying to look far enough ahead to be relevant while basing that site in a view to the past. We all tend to love some dead guy who wrote better than we did a few decades past, but the principal aim of modern technological theology will be seeing where we've laid our own traps. We need to know what a thing like Grok can do before it gives the masses a waifu to drool over. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed from the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. Exodus 12:35. Where do you think the golden calf came from? Was it the fire that Aaron made for Israel, or the pagan nation that the fire led Israel out of? There's no list of to-dos here. There's no list of do's here. That was clickbait and a hall pass to the desert. You should know better by now. So when the time comes for you to save a formerly single brother of Christ from a techno whore after his soul, be brave enough to smash his phone every time you see it, lest he enter into hell with a premium Grok account. Or when a pastor in a rainbow stole asks anyone if there is reason that these two should not be wed, and the two is actually just one plus a robot, you have my permission to read this blog post out loud, though I'm not opposed to crashing a wedding if you send me the RSVP.